All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio. Here we are live, and we're joined by Mr. Alejandro Rojas from Open Minds Radio, Open Minds TV, and of course he's a fellow Skywatcher like us. He's been on the show many times, and now he's going to join us on a periodic basis to give us some Open Minds news. And we're always excited to have you on, Alejandro. And it's been so long since we last talked, you and I. Wait, no, that was just a few hours ago. Yeah, it's kind of weird, huh? How that works. So how you been, man,
so
in the last 24 hours?
Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to have you on my show.
Yes.
Next week.
That's going to be cool. I'm going to be on Open Minds. Huh?
Yeah, I never get invited anywhere.
Who was that? Did you guys hear that?
Total Barbara Walters, and Angel's going to be sobbing.
Oh, boy.
By the time everything's over. So people, if you want to hear about Angel and the childhood experiences that make him weep on the radio, then you want to tune in.
I will say this: nobody makes me cry on air like Alejandro Rojas.
I am not even. Hold on one second. I'm reaching for that 10-foot pole.
Who is that speaking? I know Alejandro's on. Anyway, Alejandro, so how have you been, my friend?
Good, very good. Keeping busy, of course, as usual. And, it's kind of fun because, of course, we were on last night on Future Theater with the Burns, which was a lot of fun. And
how was that for you? How was that for you, though? Let's before we get into some news, how was that for you? Because you haven't been on Future Theater before, and I know that Nancy and Bill have been dying to have you on, and we finally made it happen yesterday. How cool was that?
Well, let's see. I'll have to be careful how I say this because I know Nancy may be listening. No,
she is.
It was a lot of fun. No, it was a ton of fun. In fact, it was funner than it was more fun than most radio experiences because
he sounded like me there for a second. It was
Nancy
funner.
Wanted to,
You sounded like me for a second. It was funner.
Yeah, Nancy wanted to kind of, ask me some tough questions, which I appreciate, because I like to do that too when I can. And it's hard for people to do sometimes when they're not educated on items. But certainly the Burns are really, they're kind of icons in this field. They've been around for so long. They're very, very well versed in many topics in this field, which makes it even more fun. So that's one of the fun things. It kind of felt like, in the back rooms of the conferences when you're kind of getting together with other researchers and batting stuff around and kind of off the cuff and candid. And that's what it felt like. So it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
It was geeky fun for me, man. I was just sitting back, and just, marveling at the fact that I have you on, Bill on, Nancy on, and I'm just like sitting there like, wow, I can't believe I'm on this call. This is a really cool call. Because, I'm a fan of ufology. I'm a fan of you guys, you, Bill. I mean, I've watched Bill on TV for crying out loud. I mean, how cool is that? I
mean, you guys are all pillars of the community.
There's
what
that
was
voice
really
again.
Cool, like Bill, how he can spout out all of these facts and history and have that memorized. For me, it's hard because when I write a story, I really, really get into it. And I've got to do all this research to figure it out and get into it. But I move on to the next thing, and then the facts kind of go off into the nethers. So I'm not really good at holding on to all of those facts and figures and everything. So it was so impressive that he can do that. And it was really great being able to talk to him because I've only been able to talk to him here and there, so that was probably the longest I got to talk to him. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, Bill is one of those researchers that really does store information. Like him, people like him, yourself even, to an extent, Nick Redfern, who writes 1,000 books. I mean, these researchers and investigators and reporters that really put the time in, should be commended and should really be applauded. Bill has been doing it for a while now, and he is a well of information. He was Wikipedia before there was Wikipedia. You know what I mean? He's the human Wikipedia. This guy knows just about everything. It's, sometimes I tell Nancy, I'm like, just let him talk. I really want to hear what what he's going to say. This is good.
Told me a teaser about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's real.
at the Congress, one of the guys behind the scenes, wonderful guy. I actually got him to allow me to interview him a few months ago. His name is Jordan Peace. He works behind the scenes doing the AV at many of these conferences, including the MUFON ones and at the UFO Congress. This guy is awesome. He's one of the coolest guys. He's just one of the most super nice people in the world. And he had a great idea, and he bought this trivia system, a Jeopardy-like system. And it was his idea. He tested it out, actually, at the last conference and everything, and he's ready to go. So I think we're going to do a Jeopardy session at the next UFO Congress.
Nice.
We haven't decided who will line up against each other, but hopefully if Bill Byrne comes as a speaker, we'll have to get him on that panel if he'll do it. But it's going to be a lot of fun because we'll get some of the speakers, some of the UFO researchers to go head-to-head on UFO Jeopardy and see how they do.
I'll tell you what, though, you might want to ask Nancy also because, she's a very bright researcher herself.
Sure.
I mean, not to leave her out of the compliment session here. Nancy knows her stuff, man. Amazing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, she's the lead of the show we're talking about last night. She commands the show, and like you said, and it was great. Yeah.
It was awesome. Now, of course, Open Minds news outlet. This is it's becoming the number one source for ufology news, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we read a lot of the stories right off of the website, Open Minds. We've talked about it before here on the show, and how much I admire what you guys do there. And of course, you're a very busy person on Open Minds, the website, and reporting the news. What's the latest that you guys are working on? Give us a little scoop of what's going on. And there is one thing that I wanted to ask you about, but I'm going to ask you first to give us what the latest is that you're working on before I go into this one story.
Okay, cool. Yeah, something I worked on today was a lot of fun, and this is a movie called Abductee.
Yes,
and
I heard about
there's
that.
a guy, you probably played the show. I don't know if you talked to him, but there's a guy named William Hoff, who is the producer and the director and the script writer. And, you aired my show, so I'm sure you heard it. And I interviewed him a few months ago because he told me I'm working on a found footage film called Abductee. And I like talking to people in entertainment who do this sort of thing just to get their perspective, what they think, if they believe in it. But this was really refreshing because this guy is really into abduction research and abduction, and his whole goal was to do a first person that really represents what people reportedly go through. And so he, in order to do this, has been trying to crowdfund this film. When I interviewed him, that's what stage he was at. He had an idea. He had a script that he spent a lot of time researching to put together. And so he was pushing for it. And I was excited to talk to the guy. But to be honest, I was skeptical it would go anywhere because, it's films. Everybody wants to make a film, making, enough money to make one is hard to do. But he sent me this press release this week, and I've been in contact with him where he is at the stages where they're going to start to shoot on October 2nd. And it's pretty exciting because he's gotten a Emmy Award-winning producer and director to work with him. This is a lady who won an Emmy in 2009 for her work on the A&E's Intervention television show. And he's got he's got a full suite of actors, but he's got a couple of leads who have worked on quite a few TV shows, big TV shows and movies. His lead actress has worked on a couple movies with Susan Sarandon, and you can go and see their IMDb. I have a link to those to see their history. So he has really got some top-notch people here, and he is ready to shoot. So it's pretty exciting. His whole goal is not just for this to be a movie, but to kind of start a social kind of a community for abductees to help solidify the community, but also to help represent them and give them a voice. So his goal is not just a movie, but like he says, a whole social movement to get this topic more mainstream. So that's pretty cool. I think I applaud his efforts. I hope the movie turns out great, and I'm it's a lot of fun keeping track of what this guy's up to.
That is very cool. And how are they funding this thing? Is it self-funded, the movie, or?
Yeah, all self-funded, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about, going through Hollywood and everything. In fact, he had a good quote here about he wants to keep investors out of the mix to keep the film free of the control exerted by Hollywood executives and movie studios, which can destroy a film's purpose and impact.
Very true.
And it's kind of funny because he talks about, a lot of scriptwriters write these great scripts, and then the Hollywood guys get their hands on it, and they ruin the movie, and you don't get to see the movie you wanted to see. So he had some a video that he did for his crowdsourcing Kickstarter, and I think I used another one to get money. And he talks about this in the video about how it was really important for him to keep it out of, investors' hands and the regular people who produce these sort of things, so it can be more pure and accurate to the research.
I'm surprised more folks like him haven't taken to like Kickstarter or GoFund. What is it, GoFundMe or something like that? It's another one of those accounts.
Well, they do.
Indiegogo is another one.
But a lot of them don't make it anywhere. I mean, I interviewed someone not too long ago. I think he wanted to do a comic book. I don't think he made enough.
Are you kidding me?
There's the John Mack piece where they're struggling. It looks like they're struggling to get funding, but movies cost a lot of money. It looks like, one thing that William Hopp did, and it seems like he's experienced, is that he went with the first person. And a lot of people, I even got on Twitter today someone saying, well, a lot of people don't take first person seriously. And they're right, and a couple people tweeted about how Fourth Kind has kind of really soured the taste for people on these sorts of movies, which makes a lot of sense, so that's certainly something that I think a hurdle. But I've also talked to other, even major directors, like I was able to interview the director for Earth to Echo, or Echo to Earth.
Something like that, yeah.
It is.
Earth to Echo.
But, he even talked about how it budget, you can do so much more with your budget when you do it that way, and that I think William Hopp was more realistic about how much money he could make to put this thing together, and that's probably why he's been successful in raising funds.
That's interesting. There's a guy named John Shep who he's putting together a documentary based on Superman, and that's got over almost like $1 million on Kickstarter, which it's crazy. Like something fictional like that.
I know.
What the problem is? The problem is that the people who actually want to go for the real documentary stuff and not the fantasy stuff, the biggest problem is that they're not publicizing via social media and directing traffic to fund it. That's been the biggest problem. Take the Atlas Shrugged trilogy that they finally just released the third one of. It took them years to get the ball rolling, and every single time they've done a movie, they've had totally different actors, for example, throughout the all three of those movies.
Possibly, guys.
It's hard. And documentaries don't get people excited so much, really, either.
That's another thing.
I've talked to so many people in this field. So many people have had the idea, we're going to get our documentary on UFOs in theaters. Nobody gets their documentary on UFOs in theaters. It just rarely do any documentaries get in theaters. So
it has to be like a groundbreaking documentary.
There are limited edition runs. I mean, they do limited edition things.
But it has to be like a big thing, like a big celebrity that everybody knows who died, and they made a documentary about him or her, something like that the mainstream audience, which is crazy to me, Alejandro, because, the subject of ufology is so popular that, it boggles the mind how some, film director has not put something together that's really just captured the imagination of people.
If they did it as a docudrama or a mockumentary,
that might work.
That might work better,
guys. By the way,
I'm hoping that this project kind of opens the door, especially if it does well and it's based on real events, and hopefully this will do well. And because I think that
hopefully it gets made.
The real events are much more interesting than the things that these goofballs come up with in these horror flicks. I really
Agree. Yeah, I agree.
Don't think that it's interesting or compelling.
By the way, we're joined on the call here by 559. You're called. You're on Skywatchers Radio Live. Thanks for being patient there. You're live on the air. You want to ask Alejandro a question, or myself, or Alan?
Yeah, I wanted to ask what movies you guys would recommend, like that aren't really have that Hollywood effect to them, but still have that real effect about, like, alien or paranormal type movies.
It's a good question. I'll tell you this. There's a lot of stuff that in my personal opinion, I'm sure all three of us will have a comment. My personal opinion, I've been finding some really good 45-minute to hour and a half to 2 hour, very, very well-researched and looked into stuff all over YouTube. The problem is that not enough people are watching it for it to get really posted up high in the rankings.
Well, you're talking about documentary or Hollywood kind of thing?
A little bit of both.
Well, the thing is,
if I
YouTube is
Hollywood,
not Hollywood. Yeah, YouTube is not Hollywood. That's like, a lot of stuff on there.
I don't know. I disagree, because there's some real theatrical quality stuff that just didn't have the budget to buy the theater time or even go straight to DVD because they wanted more money than the Netflix or whoever was willing to pay. And they said, let's just put it up on YouTube because we've already made it. We're not going to get our money back out of it, so might as well make it available to the most people because it was made out of passion. Yeah, the documentary.
Well, look, a perfect example of a documentary that was directly for the internet and didn't come out in theaters, and it's made a killing, and it's made a lot of money for the person who put it together, and he's doing very well with his website, is Zeitgeist. The Zeitgeist films. We put 3 on there, and this was stuff that he put on the internet for free. Then he started selling copies off the website. He pressed his own copies, and he's made a lot of money doing that, and is all self-financed.
Getting back to this guy's question, which is what I was trying to get at, was he asking about Hollywood movies or documentaries?
Caller, Hollywood or documentaries? Or I think the caller might have left us. I think he hung up.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
If it was Hollywood, I would say Fight the Future. I think the X-Files one. I don't think there's very many films that really are great in this genre, really, but... and then you got to go with classics like Close Encounters in 2001. I think were great, but otherwise, I think unfortunately.
Well, how bad did they, in your opinion? How bad did they mangle The Fourth Kind?
Oh, terribly, really bad. And I think what I get so upset about, that one does make me really angry, and it makes me really upset because they portray it as real, and the actors even start off at the beginning saying, this is all real.
Right.
And it's not. And from what I understand, I thought I read that the actors weren't too happy about that because they were told it was, and then later on they found out it wasn't.
Yep.
Going out there and just flat out lying to people for marketing is lying, unfortunately, and this was really blatant. I thought it was terrible because it certainly does not represent even what really people report. So even if it was close that way, that would have been nice. But I was extremely. I think it's one of the biggest. There's a huge disappointment. I can't say enough about how much I'm disgusted by it.
Well, I got to ask a question about the movie. Do you think it's based on anything? Is anything of it based on real, possible, even hearsay? I found it interesting. I'm curious to find out who put it all together. Where I watched that movie actually just a couple of months ago again, and it's like they're talking about a language that has never been heard before or has been spoken.
Yeah, like how much of the actual information was actually accurate?
Practically nothing. It's crap. All of that, they mixed in a lot of different paranormal things like channeling and speaking in tongues and, a lot of possession type of stuff, hovering over beds and crap like this. And then they mixed in Sitchin because they even referred to Sitchin's books. They even showed his books but didn't give him credit. We actually watched the credits at the end because we went, to write a story on it for the magazine and stuff. And they didn't even give him credit. But it was definitely the pages of his books that they showed. So, it was a mishmash of stuff. I mean, that they included fiction at all is at least a little bit of research, but for the most part, very little, very, very little.
I mean, the way I was no offense, but the way I was connecting the channeling thing is, with so many people claiming that they have implants, I was thinking maybe that's a receiver that they didn't find in an X-ray, and that's how in the movie, that's how whatever it was out there was communicating with,
well, that
through.
would be something. Maybe you can help them with the script for the,
the sequel
follow-up movie, but because that would at least then inject some.
It would make some coherent sense to me. It would make some coherent sense then.
By the way, Alejandro, we have that caller back on the line. I guess his phone is working again. You want to ask him again if he meant Hollywood or documentaries?
Oh yeah, were you meaning Hollywood or documentaries?
Caller, you're back on the line.
It was any type of movie really, or I guess a movie or a documentary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, like you guys were saying, that are valid, but then there are a lot of stuff that is not what is bogus on YouTube. So you sort of have to look at everything and sort of try to pick up out the pile what you think is more I guess.
Yeah.
Well, you should scrutinize everything. Everything you see on YouTube, you should scrutinize it a little bit because that's put together by people. By average folks. They're maybe into the subject. Some of them might be a little loony. Some of them might be onto something real. Some of them might actually have some leaked footage from Area 51. We don't know. But the thing is, you got to take everything with a grain of salt that you find on YouTube. Unfortunately.
You know what? But not just to be completely self-serving. But it's also to bring some attention to someone who I think does a great job, and that's our video editor Michael Klein. We do a lot of videos, and there are many documentaries on China and Peru and important sightings and MJ-12 documents and Richard Doty and all this other stuff. And I think, Open Minds TV is a channel on YouTube where you can find all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because I'm involved with it, but it's also because, Michael Klein, our video guy, he's pretty much our video department, and he does an awesome job. Before him, there's a guy, Tom Ruffin. We had two guys in there, and Tom was spectacular as well. But they do some amazing and great work. I mean, we do the easy part, just talking and everything, and they edit everything together, put together graphics and everything. And I kind of feel that sometimes those videos don't get the credit that they deserve. They're really great, and I think I feel that there's a lot of research put into those. So those are somewhere where I would send people. But otherwise, right now it's hard to come to mind. There's been so many really good ones. But of course, James Fox, he's done I think really great work with Out of the Blue. And
I was amazed at that.
There's a lot of other ones, though, but I'm so terrible with names. I'm just really bad that way. We do a film festival at our conference, and we give away awards for the best documentaries, and we do a People's Choice where people choose that too. So you can always just do a Google search for EBE Awards, and you'll find, or EBE Award winner, and you'll find a bunch of really good ones. I know Disclosure Dialogues, those have won some. Those are done by Jennifer Stein. Mm-hmm. She does great work. But there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Caller, any more questions for Alejandro?
Because I'm actually thinking about going to college, some sort of studying a film. But I don't know. I kind of been debating it because there's so many people that say not to go to film. But I mean, I think the easiest way to get into the film type of business, or not even business, but social life of film.
Where do you live?
Film industry. Fresno, California.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I would not dissuade anybody from doing it. I mean, and I think, speaking of films, to me, I've always been fascinated, and I write about him quite a bit, with Steven Spielberg. He's amazing. I love his movies, but he's also a huge UFO buff. And even talking about alien abduction, he did a whole miniseries called Taken that was all based off of research. He is very, very well versed in this field. And if you watch the videos, the making of Taken, he talks about all of this stuff. He talks about implants. It sounds like he's a guy that would be at the UFO Congress lecturing when he's talking about putting together that movie.
Yeah, he researched it quite well. That was the one with Matt Fuhr and Dakota Fanning.
Are like that.
Yep.
Close Encounters is, like that. It was all based off of, Blue Book files and with Blue Book consultant, J. Allen Hynek. So, yeah, he's an example, Spielberg, and of course he's getting older. So I don't think that anybody would object to being the next Spielberg. So that's not a bad goal to have.
No. It's a great series. Also, even you might enjoy this, caller. If you haven't, check out. It was only one season. Dark Skies.
Yeah. Oh wow, that was a great series.
Now, if you want to see something that could very well be true, this could be exactly what's going on with the whole ufology mystery. That could be exactly what it is. I mean, that series was fantastic. It was an unfortunate thing that it came out, right as the X-Files came out and blew up. So nobody was looking on, I think it was NBC that was playing this. But it was a great series, man. It ran for one season, but it actually feels like one long movie when you watch it. Just a phenomenal series. Caller, thanks for calling in.
And I always say this. Oh, I was going to say, just one more movie I love to plug, too, is the Paul Davids movie on Roswell, which was a Showtime special. It's kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
But
was that the one that Martin Sheen was in?
Yeah, Martin Sheen and Kyle MacLachlan. And,
yeah. That's on Netflix now, actually, I believe.
It is,
it is. Great.
I believe it is, yeah.
That's a great movie, too. Thanks again, caller, for
really
joining the show here on Skywatchers. Appreciate your call. I wanted to get to one article that I think Jason might have posted on Open Minds that I wanted to ask you about, because it was a very interesting video, and it was with Lee Spiegel and Richard Hoover. It has to do with the Martian Martian meteorite that showed likelihood of Martian life. And Richard Hoover is very adamant that he found Martian life. This is proof. I mean, definitive is the word.
Yeah, we had him at our Congress, UFO Congress last year, and he spoke about this. And he then did that interview with Lee Spiegel, and that really took off. That was huge. So Jason was able to reuse that video in the story today, just because, Hoover is saying, and there are other scientists besides him that say this. In fact, he's working with a group of scientists. One of them is also mentioned in Jason's story, who is kind of the lead head guy out there championing this idea. But Hoover, I think, really clarified it and kind of stuck his neck out there when he did that interview with Lee Spiegel. But he's saying that, these guys are NASA astrobiologists. Hoover is now retired, but he did work, and he was a lead of a group. Some people kind of question his credentials, but his credentials are titanium, they're bulletproof. And he says that we do have evidence, that there's been evidence a couple of times that they have found that in his mind is absolute proof of microbial life on Mars and specifically. So I think that, that is really important. And I think people kind of also don't understand that these things are not set in stone. So like that Martian rock story, when Clinton came out and said they found extraterrestrial life and then later it kind of got debunked, it wasn't fully debunked. Not all scientists agree that it was debunked. Hoover's one of them, a very, prestigious scientist who says, no, that wasn't debunked, that was life. Mm-hmm. So it isn't a foregone conclusion that we haven't found it yet. But, you got to look for that piece of evidence that meets that critical mass where, you have enough of a majority of scientists agreeing that it is proof. So, that interview is really exciting, and it's pretty interesting. And he's going so far as to say he thinks that some of the scientists kind of shoved some of the evidence aside because they just didn't like where it was going.
My thing is, why isn't science more up to speed with Mars as it is already with all the times that we've gone up there, and why isn't this information getting out there? I think that they're not trying. Look, he's a NASA insider, and I don't think they're trying to give him any credibility because obviously they want this to stay hidden. But I'm pretty sure that he's not the only one that knows what's up there on Mars, and it's just he's the only one that's coming out and coming forward with it. But what would be the holdup to just announce that they officially have found microbial life? I mean, this is not like ETs running around. It's microbial past life, perhaps. What do you think? It's just a holdup?
I don't think it is a conspiracy personally. I think it's just a disagreement. I think that a lot of people just.
The way he describes the findings, though, is pretty clear. What he
describes it, but then when you hear the other side,
that's the problem.
People from the other side, they, this stuff goes over my head. So they describe it how, this isn't right because of the blue and the bitty blah. Don't do the bitty boot, and it's like, okay. So all you can do is rely on the experts because it's so very technical. But what's exciting about Hoover is he is, highly credentialed, and he's one of the top experts. So he's certainly one of the people you would expect to hear from, and that NASA would showcase, if there was a consensus that was. But what's great is it holds it open and it shows the questions still out there. And that's how science really is. I think a lot of people kind of want to bury their head and not really look at the scientific community because they feel it's all corrupt and everything. But if you look at the scientific community, there's rarely a consensus on anything. I mean, look at all the drugs or the pills or anything out there. There's always two sides or three sides or four sides. If you look at the Higgs boson, until that was discovered, there were a big group of people who didn't believe in that. When it gets to dark matter, which is a funny thing because we throw that term out there so much, not all scientists believe in dark matter. The woman who discovered the Earth, that the universe was expanding, which was, the reason why they thought, there must be something else out there. It must be dark matter. She said, no, there's no such thing as dark matter. She didn't believe in it. The nature of what dark matter might be is completely debated, and if it exists at all. So everything is completely debated. So that's what makes me laugh when we talk about UFOs or the extraterrestrial hypothesis or something, and it's laughed at. Well, you know what? Dark matter isn't proven. Dark matter is just a theory out there. No one's seen it. Nobody knows exactly what properties it has. It's a guess that, we don't know.
But haven't they been able to measure some type of dark matter recently?
They've been able to measure certain things that lead to there being something like that out there, but not necessarily proving that there is one answer to this. Some people think there could be multiple answers out there. There could be lots of stuff out there.
Okay, so they can measure the effects of dark matter, but they can't actually measure.
Well, it's kind of like gravity. We really don't understand gravity completely. We can measure it. We know when you hold a apple up and you drop it, it falls to the ground, but we don't necessarily know why. There are even some scientists, the conventional theory is that the Earth is pulling the apple, but some scientists are saying no, out in space is pushing the apple.
Right.
So there's most things. I mean, we like to think we know so much, but we don't know a lot of stuff, and science is like that. So it could be. And Hoover's certainly very convincing, and the question seems to be open so long. That's what's really interesting when you look at some of these things, like dark matter or even some cold fusion experiments. They say, no, that's not cold fusion. No, Hoover, that isn't life. But they cannot definitively prove otherwise either.
My thing is, why, if Hoover is so adamant about, what his findings are, why haven't others in the scientific community come at his, to his defense, or have any come to his defense?
Well, they have, and that's what I mentioned, is that there is a large there are organizations, such as, I think it's the University of Alabama, and they're partnered up with scientists in London or in England that have really championed this. In fact, they're the leads on all of this. So there is a group of scientists. In fact, they have their own journal on this topic where they post a lot of different things. So I think his name is Chandra. That's what it is. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Chandra. But if you look at Jason's story, or if you look at the video or the original story for that video on Hoover also, you'll find, or, we talk about these guys a lot because they're making these claims quite often. In fact, Chandra talked about how this was an interesting experiment they did not too long ago, where they launched balloons up into the stratosphere, and they had a device up there that opened up and then closed. When the device came back, they then measured to see what they got, and they got living organisms there. Chandra's argument, and even some scientists have agreed that life can't make it up there. Even if there's a big explosion or something, it can't, that's too high, according to our physics, for microbes to get to. So those couldn't have been Earth's microbes. Those had to have been from space. And Chandra's theory is that these are maybe clouds of these microbes that float through space that came into our atmosphere. This was during a meteor shower. So
maybe that's how life is seeded on the planets. Maybe that's how life is seeded on planets, through the microbes that just fall down on the planet itself.
Yep. So this is Chandra's experiment. And then, of course, even more recent, and I'm going to write an update to this tomorrow, is the Russians saying that they scraped some gunk off of the space station, and they found that there was what they believed to be plankton there, and that it was thriving. So, if we find out that life can hitchhike on the ISS and then live and thrive in space, any of that's possible.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm thinking with that one. I'll tell you, I'm thinking with that one that probably the evaporation in the sea probably took the plankton up along with the evaporation from the sea, which ended up in high altitude and somehow brushed up against the ISS.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is that they've been up there for so long and have survived. That one's questioned by NASA still. They're still looking at some information, but
what plankton can't be an extremophile?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the argument, but NASA is just saying we need to see more data and hear more about this. Russia has not released that data yet. But interesting story I'm posting tomorrow is that a German UFO and kind of paranormal and other kind of extreme science kind of researcher, he got a quote from their space organization, which did say that they did find bacterial DNA. That's what the Russians found, and I guess this is they should know because they have one of their astronauts up there too. But that their instruments are not able to determine exactly what this bacteria is, if it is plankton or if it thrived. But they were able to show that it was bacterial DNA. So yeah, that's terribly, terribly interesting. It's interesting that one of the things that this always reminds me of is a astrobiologist who I interviewed, and he was kind of a religious guy, but he wanted to remind me that the question of life is still wholly open, in that we have no idea how the genesis of life happens, and that we don't have a demonstration of life, appearing on Earth at all. So we don't know at all that life started here on Earth.
Every scientific, theories like the Big Bang. That's a theory. There's no real proof 100% concrete to just about anything. We think that's how everything, it happened. It just one bang billions of years ago, but really there's proof for it and against it. But it's like everything in science, which is amazing.
Well, and he even has a good point. He's like, if life started here on Earth, why did it only happen once?
Right.
Why hasn't it happened before? Happened again.
Yeah. Well, it means, if he's talking just about Earth or like in our solar system?
No, he's talking about the minerals coming together and life spawning from some mixture of, the right chemistry coming together and spawning life.
Because someone somewhere stirred the mix together.
Somebody had a giant spoon.
Someone somewhere stirred the mix together.
Guy
jumped into the river after he took a potion and dissolved his body, and then
where I was going.
Many years later, they made a movie about it. Alejandro, we're almost out of time for the segment, man. It's always fun having you on.
Yeah.
And thanks for being on with us. I know it was kind of last minute, and last week we were supposed to have you on, and we had an issue.
One more piece of news. Can I throw this one out there?
Go for it.
This is really exciting. The UFO Congress. I think I mentioned this last night. We got in the Guinness World Records as the biggest UFO conference.
This is cool. Yeah.
Congrats. How many people showed up?
Huh?
That is awesome.
How many people
came out?
We have
over 2,000. It's usually between... This last time we had the largest, it was probably around 2,500. I say probably because we did a lot of local foot traffic. Some of them just go through the vendor area, so it's hard to track that. The reason we know it was bigger is that we had more attendance in the conference room, and it was, packed. I mean, it's usually standing room only and some talks, not all of them, but we had more of that than usual. So, it's really exciting, and in fact, Huffington Post is going to have a story up on that tomorrow, I think.
Very cool. That is awesome news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
the next conference is when again? Give us the date again for the next conference.
February 18th to the 22nd. You can go to ufocongress.com to see more, or go to openminds.tv. And Angel's going to be there hanging out, right? Both of you guys.
I will be there. I don't know about Alan. Alan, you going to make it, or?
At that time of the year, I actually have some free downtime. Now that you
you told me, Alan.
There you go.
You think you can make it? I remember last time you said that. So you can hold me up. You guys got to be there.
Alejandro, you can hold me up to
out.
Absolutely.
Plus, you guys get to talk to more people that you can interview, and then you get to talk to them at length. If either of you are single, there are lots of people that hook up at this thing.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
With like-minded people.
There you go. That's what I need. I need to check us into ufology.
Yeah, I got to go check the website now to see photos of the women from last year.
There you go.
Yeah, Angel and I were just talking about that.
That's what I'm looking for. A girl who believes in UFOs. I'm so envious. I'm so envious of you, man. Let me tell you.
That I found a UFO woman.
He's found the good one. He's found the keeper.
We're going to make a shirt for you that says you're looking forward to being probed. The shirt's going to say, I want to be abducted by you if you're cute, and I can't wait to be probed.
There you go.
That's perfect. There you go.
Guys,
those would sell like hotcakes at the conference too.
we got to take off. We have Robert Morningstar waiting in the hot wings to join us on the other side. Alejandro, thank you so much again for being on with us in the first segment, my friend.
Yeah,
You're
great
awesome.
talking to you.
Thank you, guys.
With us for the second hour of the show. Really, a man that needs no introduction. He's been on this show many times, and he's been on my other show a few times, and he's a good friend. Love having him on. He's one of my favorite guests to have on the show, Mr. Robert Morningstar himself. Robert, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Angel. It's great to be back, and it's been a very eventful summer.
It has, and we have some really interesting stuff to go over. You sent me a couple of things on Facebook earlier tonight that really got me going a little bit. One in particular, which we're going to talk about in a minute here, is a crater on the moon, which looks like it. It looks like there's something there, some buildings, some structures, and there's that one, and of course, the other ones that we talked about, the UFO in space. There's even a crystal. You sent me a picture of what looked like a crystallized object or UFO, which looked really weird also. But where do you want to start off tonight? Let's catch up. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to begin? And by the way, everybody who's listening could follow along here by going to our Twitter account. Find Skywatchers Radio on Twitter. I've tweeted out all the videos we're going to talk about, so you can follow along. It's also on the Facebook event page, in the Facebook page, Skywatchers Radio. Just look for it. You'll find it. And so where are we going to start off here, Robert?
Well, I'd like to start off with just a little brief review of what happened during the summer. Since our last talk, we were on June 3rd, I recall.
Right.
And in preparation for the secret space program that I was attending June 28th and 29th in San Mateo. And that was a great event, actually. I was very honored to be on the same stage with Richard Dolan and Joseph Farrell, who's talked about the Nazi Bell and a lot of other things. John Rappaport, Michael Schratt, Mark McCandlish. It was a pretty comprehensive conference. Dealt with everything from where did the money go, the stealing of $40 trillion, funneling it into black projects. This talk by Catherine Austin Fitz. And then Dr. Carol Rosen addressed the conference on the need to keep weaponization out of outer space, to keep outer space a peaceful territory. And so I was very proud to be there, and I showed the moon towers that I discovered in May, the constellation of space stations, and the moon racer, which is one of, I think I sent you 2 photos of that craft.
Right.
That I found in the...
That's one that kind of looks like it's crystallized, or it looks like a crystal ship. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, crystal ship is a good description. It looks like ice. It looks...
Right.
It's got a scimitar wing, a truss-like structure, cross beams. But the remarkable thing about it is it's not symmetrical. It's got a fuselage, a center fuselage, and 2 outriggers, I would call them. It's kind of like an outrigger canoe, but with a canoe only on one side. The other side looks like antennas and electromagnetic gadgetry. And from the appearance of this thing in the film, it's clear that it's not a reactive motor propulsion. It's not burning anything. It's just zipping along on gravity lines. It's quite remarkable. But it's not the only photograph. This is one of 4 that I've found of similar craft that seem to have buzzed Apollo 15, Apollo 16, and Apollo 11. And there are several photographs, each from these different missions, but they show objects that have the similar structure and similar construction, if not the identical craft themselves. But you know how it is. The United States has thousands of F-16s and variations of them.
Right.
So they're built on a particular design. But each of them, all of them, seem to be non-reactive propulsion, non-reactive thrust craft. There's no smoke. There's no burning of anything, no trail. So it's very exciting to come upon these things after so many years of their being kept in the dark.
Now, any information how you got your hands on this material?
Oh, just diving into archives, people sending it to me. I have a network of people. I describe myself as a civilian intelligence analyst, and there are scores of others who are doing similar work, and really good work. And I'd like to mention a few people. You can go to YouTube and look at the work of Luna Cognita. A lot, these people, they're really, they want to be anonymous. I respect that, so they take on names and handles. And Luna Incognita is one of them. And I've derived quite a lot of knowledge, information from Luna Cognita. I'm sorry. I mispronounced it. Luna Cognita. Luna Cognita means the known moon, knowing the moon, or the known moon. Incognita
welcome to my world of mispronunciations.
Yeah. There's so many. And then there's Secure Team. Secure Team on YouTube has a lot of interesting, fascinating videos.
Oh, yeah, I've seen a good number of those.
And then there's Dark Skywatcher 74, whom I'd like to say hi to. He's been going through a little bit of illness. I've understood from somebody that knows him directly, and I wish him the best because he's put out some really, really good video of.
Can I comment on one of those videos?
Sure, please, go ahead.
I'm looking at the video that we put up about that secret UFO footage smuggled out of Area 51. And I'm noticing, it's 3 orbs that are making a flying pattern around Area 51 that seems to form a nice, unique triangle. I'm just, at a sheer theory here, I'm just wondering, what are the odds of that being one of these mysterious triangles just being cloaked or optical camouflage, or is it actually 3 distinct objects?
Very interesting question.
I think it's definitely 3 distinct objects because as you study it, I know it's, there's a lot of action going on and you have to really spend time with it.
When it's banking and turning, the angles are still the same.
Oh, yeah. No, actually,
by the way,
if you look
the
closely,
video they were talking about, real quick, by the way, the video we're talking about is banned secret UFO footage smuggled out of Area 51.
Right.
It's on the Twitter. If you guys want to look at the video, lower the volume, keep listening to us, but you can follow along. Go ahead, Robert.
Right. I was going to say, if you really look closely, when they get into that silent mode and they slow them down and you track them, you'll see that they actually maneuver, change position, and altitude.
But isn't it changing? Isn't it changing respective of where they are?
They're
to
changing
where it's
in
being
relationship to each other, and one of them actually seems to drop down way low and pass between 2 tanks. They're 2 giant tanks.
Maybe.
Take a look at that. This is where I thought the formation was very, very tight.
I mean, I'm looking at the horizontal and vertical plane. And it's like, it looks like it's realistically possibly one solid object.
I see what Robert is saying. I mean, I'm looking at the video now, and it really does look like it. There's parts of it that it looks like it moves. Yeah, it looks like it's.
It looks like it's flying in a circle around the base, which means the angle keeps on. Okay.
No, but the thing is,
the angle's changing on her.
Yeah, but the angle is changing, but also not only is the angle changing. At one point, it looks like 2 of the lights are getting closer together while it's still on the same flight pattern. That would tell me that they're very. It's a very tight formation, but there's some moments that
there's another one that drops. It drops between the tanks, and you know what it looks like to me?
I see. It just went through the tanks. I see what you're talking about.
It's really amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why it gave me the impression that we were watching some kind of low-altitude strafing maneuvers, objects that are capable of, zipping in and going really low, close to the ground, more like, fighters, anti-tank aircraft.
Well, it says, was it from 89? Could that have been like our first generation drones?
That's 89, yeah, that's the end of the Reagan era. So,
is that our first generation of drones?
Could be. I'll tell you the other reason I believe that it's authentic is that I've seen exactly those type of craft several times over here in New York. They've flown by my vantage point over there on the Hudson River. I teach Tai Chi over here in Riverside Park for years and years and years. And I have had sightings of those. I call them white pearl UFOs.
Funny as it is, I was just in New Rochelle the other month.
Oh, yeah.
Should have stopped by.
I have a friend, anytime, if you're in New York, give me a call that you're coming in. But I have a friend up there, Nick Zach, who heard me on Coast to Coast, and he contacted me with some amazing videos that he's taken up there in Westchester, in Yonkers, Westchester, New Rochelle, and they're quite remarkable. There was one. He's got a really great eye and he's got a really steady hand. I can't believe he's that steady, but he is with his iPhone. And he got a UFO. He said he saw it streaking up from south to north, That was the first thing. He thought at first it was a shooting star, shooting from south to north. And then when it was overhead, he saw it just stop still. And so that's when he grabbed his iPhone camera, and he started videoing it, and then tracked it, and it descended, and and you can hear him and his girlfriend, an angelic intuitive, as he describes her, discussing it, coming down, and then you see the treetop appear, and she says, look, it looks like it's going to go behind the tree. And at the moment that she said that, it stopped dead in its flight, and then followed the contour, the outer contour of the tree, and then went off along 2 arbors, as if it heard her say it and stopped and accommodated his videography by staying in view until it just went away. It was a really impressive...
Sorry, that sounds way too Schrodinger's cat to me.
Well, Schrodinger's cat is all over the place. We have to get used to it.
No, I mean,
I've always thought about Schrodinger's cat when they say, this cat, is he dead or is he alive? I say, well, if the box is made of cardboard, I can tell you.
Well, I mean, the reason I threw that in is so as soon as someone actually acknowledged and said that it existed, it changed its habit and pattern.
Yes, but it seemed to in response.
Exactly.
Well, that she was worried they were going to lose it behind the tree, and then it seemed it was instantaneous. And
right, she acknowledged its existence, and then.
And then a lot of people up there in Westchester, they keep their eyes to the sky. And this is part of this network that I'm talking about, that when we share information, we experience what I call cross-pollination of information, like the bees.
Right.
Fertilize one flower. So we do the same thing. When we share knowledge with each other, often we provide complementary knowledge, which, not a good boy, attaboy. It's like the complement. That's the other part that fits, the missing piece in the body of knowledge that you had. So I'm always for open sharing of information within limits, with the right people. Because,
well, we can't give away all our secrets.
Right, but then there are other people who want to get your information just so they can debunk it and turn it and ridicule it. And you have to be careful, because I've got 2 trolls on Facebook right now who have been, snarking away. But, it's really fun.
Only 2? I got like a dozen.
It's okay, I got an elf and a warlock.
There's a fluctuation, but there's 2 that regular guys. But the funny thing is, some people, take these guys as a nuisance and a pest, and they are, but they can also be fun. I like to engage and...
Well, let me ask you a question about some of the sources that you have, some of these folks on YouTube and stuff. I mean, how credible is some of this information when it comes to the background? Have you done background research, like on this Area 51 video?
I don't know. I look at the video and I analyze it for myself based on my own expertise. And I started making film, 8mm film, when I was 10 years old, 11 years old.
So you're the one that made that movie that Spielberg had something to do with.
No, I'm good at analyzing movies. Pardon the expression, one of my claims to fame is that I exposed the doctoring of the Zapruder film, that the Zapruder film was a consciously engineered mass hallucination. And the good news that I'd like to announce on your show tonight is that through an act of God, somebody leaked a working copy of the Zapruder film. And by that I mean that the Zapruder film was worked over and worked over and worked over for years, at least 5 years before the public got to see it. All these people think that this thing had to be done overnight and that it was impossible. No, they worked methodically for 5 years before they dared show it on CBS when the famous Dan Rather report, when he misrepresented what actually happened, because they stopped the film right at the frame before the head shot and the head exploding. And Dan Rather misreported the direction of the president's head. He said he was thrown violently forward. and nowhere do you see him thrown violently forward in the film, you know?
Well,
So
there was a
anyway,
magic bullet that did that.
Well, yeah. Well, magic bullet, jet
Love
fluff,
magic.
the jet effect, the jiggle analysis, all hokum. Friends, I'm telling you, I have received a copy of the Zapruder film that has the missing frames of the shots at the grassy knoll.
Now, why is that not on YouTube already?
Why not? Because who knows if it is or it isn't. I'm just telling you that I got it. And I'm telling you that it's legit. And in November, between now and November 22nd, I'm going to share it with the world and show these missing frames. And it was clearly 2 shots that killed him at the grassy knoll. Now, the trick of the Zapruder film is that at least 5 shots hit the man. 1 between the shoulder blades, 1 in the throat, and 3 shots. 1 skimmed off the top of his head at Z295. It left a vapor trail, which was one of the first things I found. And then the mortal wounds at the grassy knoll were 2 shots. Now, how do you force true the magic bullet theory when you have a film that shows 5 shots striking? Well, what you do is you take out the space between 2 shots that are close to each other. So, in this case, what I've discovered, and I've always known it, I described this long before I found the film. The first shot at the grassy knoll came from the right side. It was standing near Zapruder's position, and so this was a steep angle down. It hit the forehead and opened up the forehead. It hit the cranium, or hit the brain pan, the bottom of the skull, and bounced up, and that's called the Harper fragment. The fragment went across the street. So imagine a V, right? Comes down, whoop, V, boom, boom, and the other piece flies off. Now, about a second to a second and a half or a second and a quarter later, the second shot was fired, and it entered the already open wound, passed straight through from front to back, and took out the back of the skull. And that's the piece that Jackie jumped out to get. Now, how you cover it up is you take out the frames. Okay, let's say it's 1 second apart, and if you believe the FBI or Zapruder was shooting at 18 frames per second, if you believe Zapruder, he was shooting at 24 frames per second, because that's what he told the Warren Commission. So what you do is you show the first shot, the head opening up and exploding, and then you cut out space of time between that moment and the arrival and the passage of the second shot. So you removed how many frames? If it's 1 second and it was 18 frames per second, 18 frames were removed. So you don't see the lag in time between the arrival of the first shot and the second shot. It's been removed. It's literally missing time in the Zapruder film. The same way we use the term in UFO abductions. Well, there's a lot of missing time in the Zapruder film. And that's what I was able to disassemble in 1992, 93 to 96 and 98 when I traveled all over. I went to Chicago, I went to Providence, I went to Dallas 3 times, and we had a huge brainstorming session in 1996 in Dallas, attended by Jim Mars and Dr. David Mantik and Roy Schaefer and Jim Fetzer and Neil Twyman and Jack White. All these really great researchers that had been studying the film for years, but I was the first one to stand on the stage before 700, 800 people and say, friends, you've been studying a tainted document. You've devoted 30 years, it was 1992, 93, you've devoted 30 years to trying to make sense out of a consciously engineered mass hallucination from which about 10 feet of film has been removed. So that started it, and then everybody picked up the ball, and they all, Jim Fetzer wrote 2 books on it, Dr. Mantik lectures on it, optical illusions, magnifications, subliminal things, to distractions. But I think the cat is out of the bag, and after November 22nd this year, and people get to study this little snippet of film is remarkable. And it shows that the only hero in Dealey Plaza that day was Jackie Kennedy. And Jackie Kennedy is the most slandered and libeled person in the whole scene.
And really not, and it's not justified at all, because she did not.
Because of the doctoring of the film. The doctoring of the film, the removal of the frames, Because it's not just that part that's been removed, actually. It's not just the part between the arrival of the bullets. What's been removed are her reactions. It's amazing. She sidled over to Jack. She heard him. She said she had terrible gurgling noises. She turned. She sidled over to him, put her arm around his shoulder, and just saying, "Jack, what's wrong?" And at the moment that she did that, she was looking him right in the face. The first bullet hit, exploding his head. She squints and closed her eyes in the spray of the brain and the blood. Then she opened her eyes, and the second bullet went through, almost took off her arm. Imagine she's got her arm around his shoulder, his neck.
Right.
And the bullet passes through the base of his skull. And you want to know something? Her reaction was so fast, she tried to grab the bone fragment. The bullet went through, the bone flew off, and her arm reached out as if to catch it. Then she saw it was on the trunk. And then she very naturally, like every human being, turned on her right hip, her right knee, her left knee, crawled out like a cat going after it. And at this moment, the car accelerated, because the actual thing is the car had stopped to a dead stop. And that's another thing that had to be covered up. The car stopped twice in the course of stopping in front of the sign and stopping for a moment at the grassy knoll when the death blows were delivered. Then the guy peeled out. Jackie's on the trunk. And when he peeled out, the fragment and Jackie went flying backward. At that moment, Clint Hill arrives, puts his hand on the hand guard there, and he saw what she was after, and he obviously says, "Oh my God, she's after that, and she'll die. She'll kill herself going after it." So what he does is he pushes it back like a hockey puck pushes it back to where she can get it. She grabs it, pulls it toward her. She falls on her side, and then they work their way back into the car. And what you
I don't know how in her mind she could have gone after. I don't know where in her mind she was thinking about going after the chunk.
It's shock. It's
just a reaction, man. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but, it's like Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together again, but they had the pieces and they were trying, and that's
but Humpty's wife was probably... See, I'm just like...
But this is a millisecond after it's happened,
Yeah, it's a human reaction, Alan.
It's a human reaction to go after the chunk, not flee.
Well, her reaction was...
She went after a piece of bone that was a piece of her husband's head, my friend. That's what she was doing.
But what I'm saying is, it's like, when that kind of thing happens, it's the fight or flight thing. And she did neither.
It's her husband, man.
It was, there's fight and flight and save somebody's life, In emergencies, there's really that third one. Fight,
she wasn't a medical student. She didn't know if maybe they could put that piece of brain back in his head and he could survive. She don't know that.
Human instinct. Look, she carried it in her hand. Listen, folks. She held that in her hand all the way till she got to the hospital. And when she saw the doctor, she said to him, "Will this help?"
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
Well, it's not something to laugh about.
I'm not.
No, it is kind of comical, though.
God only knows how our world would be if he lived.
Well, his spirit lives,
and
listen, his spirit lives, and that's where they made their great mistake. They thought they could get rid of the guy.
Show me what president has imbued his spirit or conveyed his spirit since his passing, besides Reagan.
Yeah, that's a mixed bag for me.
I can't come up with anybody who arrives at that. Reagan came close, and he came close to the same end and for the same reasons, I believe,
Right. Now, here's the thing, though. Once this footage is put out there and you finally approve the multiple shots, I mean, where are we still in the entire conspiracy? I mean, we still don't know why he was killed.
Yes,
Harvey
we do.
Oswald,
yes, we do. My God. So much has come out. So much has come out in the last couple of years, deathbed confessions and documentation. I talk about documentation. I have in my possession a letter that was written to the FBI asking them to go easy on Jack Ruby because Jack Ruby was working as an informant for Congressman Richard M. Nixon, Republican of California, and the letter was written in 1947. Jack Ruby was working for Richard Nixon. Jack Ruby was working for Richard Nixon from 1947 through the 1950s, through the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, I'm doing some math here. That's an interesting add-up.
Yeah,
and listen, I'll tell you where this document is. I tell people where they are, you go in there, you dig it up. I did my work. I went through hundreds and hundreds of documents, reading them page by page, thumbnail to thumbnail. But there's a wonderful resource out there. It's called The Portal to Texas History. And that has all the documents that the Dallas Police Department had on their files. And they scanned all of them and put them up there. And you'll find remarkable things in there. And this is quite a find. Jack Ruby working for Richard M. Nixon.
That is pretty interesting.
1947.
Do you think, that some of the, the conspiracy theories, obviously, especially dealing with the ufology angle, a lot of people think that Kennedy was, rubbed out because of, him wanting to come out with the truth on what he knew about, UFOs and aliens and, the shadow government had him killed because of that. Is there any truth to that, do you think? Do you think that's accurate? Because I think that
I believe it's very true.
Explain it.
He, after the Cuban Missile Crisis, he had a huge, incredible dread of accidental nuclear war. And there were two kinds of accidental nuclear war that we could have. One was miscalculating Russian motives, intentions, and tactics, because he knew that World War I had broken out that way through the alliance system. But the other way that both Khrushchev and Kennedy dreaded accidental nuclear war is that UFOs were intruding into our national air defense bases from the North Pole. UFOs would zip down, coming down toward the United States over Canada, and apparently trying to imitate a Russian nuclear warhead coming in, or several, if it was a fleet of UFOs, they are still called fast walkers.
Right.
And they had done that to Russia, and they have done that to us. And we had gone on alert, thinking that Russia had launched a nuclear strike on us several times in the 50s and 60s, and it kept happening in the 70s. But then, by then, we were wise to them. But they confused the radar, the DEW line, and the BMEWS line, ballistic missile early warning system that we had, and they would be mistaken. They could be mistaken for nuclear warheads. So one of the things that Khrushchev and Kennedy discussed many times after the hotline was put in, Kennedy started going around everyone, all the committees, because the United States is run by committees, And so Kennedy was talking directly to Khrushchev, and they were discussing UFOs and the threat that they pose to accidental nuclear war and how to prevent it. And Kennedy, on November 12th, 1963, wrote a letter to the Director of Central Intelligence demanding a complete reclassification of all unknowns. He didn't say UFOs, he used the word unknowns. He wanted to know which were U.S. Navy, U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force unknowns, what were Russian unknowns, and what was left over. And he wanted that paper on his desk in February 1964, expecting, of course, to win, but he wanted it that following February. And on that day, that's when all the action went down, and here's what the action was. We all know about Operation North Woods, okay? This was a terrorist plot by the Defense Department to conduct a terrorist event in the Miami area and pin it on the Cubans and on Castro, on pro-Castro Cubans.
Yep.
We all know that. We have the plans. They were discovered by Professor Joan Mellon, who wrote Farewell to Justice, all about the Kennedy assassination. Well, here's what I see happen. Kennedy refused to go along with that plan, Operation North Woods, which was supposed to be December 1963, which was supposed to create a false flag attack in Miami, killing who knows how many people with a terrorist event, and then that was going to be the casus belli for invading Cuba. But Kennedy had told Khrushchev that he wouldn't invade Cuba, and we would take our missiles out of Turkey. That was a quid pro quo. They took their atomic warheads out of Cuba. We took the Jupiter missiles, which were really outdated, out of Turkey. And he promised not to invade Cuba. So now the Joint Chiefs of Staff are demanding that he invade Cuba and that he let this plan for a terrorist event in Miami to be conducted and be pinned on Castro. And Kennedy balked. He said, no, I gave my word to Khrushchev. So what they did, my friends, is they moved Operation Northwoods up from December of 1963 to November 22nd, 1963. And the terrorist act that they conducted to pin on Castro and the communists was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. See? That's what really happened. Now, how did it happen? It happened by turning the assassination apparatus that was aimed at Castro.
Robert, speak a little bit closer to the phone because we're losing your audio a little bit.
Okay. Well, how they did it is by turning the assassination apparatus that they had aimed and financed to kill Castro, and just turned the same mechanics on Kennedy and they set up assassination plots in Chicago, in Miami, and in Dallas. There was no way that President Kennedy was going to see Christmas in 1963 with the plots that were up against him. But he refused to let them conduct a terrorist act in Miami. Now, this terrorist act could also have occurred on November 18th, when Kennedy was in Miami to address the Cuban community in the Orange Bowl. Everybody talks about the debacle of the Bay of Pigs, but they don't talk about Kennedy's victory as a result of the same Bay of Pigs. Kennedy worked from the day the Bay of Pigs fiasco happened, unbeknownst to him, he wasn't told about it, that he worked until November of 1963 to get all of the survivors of the Bay of Pigs invasion back. He got all the prisoners back from Castro's Cuba. He paid in medicine and food, and this understanding that things might get better if they went along with this. So when Kennedy was in Miami, there was to be a motorcade from the airport, just like in Dallas. There was going to be an airport to the Orange Bowl motorcade. However, on November 9th of 1963, November 8th and 9th of 1963, the FBI not the FBI actually, it was actually the Miami Police Department had recorded a conversation between an informant, William Somerset, and Joseph Miltier, the number 3 man in the Ku Klux Klan, and a big wig in all these operations. And they discussed the killing of President Kennedy, the shooting of him by somebody with a telescopic rifle from a high office building, the picking up of a patsy who would be pinned with crime, and, very interestingly for me, they were looking for Kennedy doubles. He called them lookalikes.
Right.
And Somerset said to him, lookalikes? I didn't know he had any. Oh, he said, and Somerset, no, he has them. They have them in every city. They have a couple of them in every city. So that was a thing that I was interested in because of the relationship that I had found of the death of Officer Tippit to the, as the getaway vehicle, basically, to get away with the autopsy. Because Officer Tippit was killed with 1 bullet through the brain, and so they took his brain and presented it to the autopsist, who said, oh, this victim died with 1 bullet through the brain.
And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what, though, I didn't know much about Officer Tippit until the last time we talked about him, and when I saw some of the pictures and stuff online, and the autopsy picture of Kennedy, that is so clearly Tippit. I mean,
yes, it is now, but I was the first one to realize that, because I was glued to the TV set when all of this happened, and I'll tell you honestly, there is a film of Officer Tippit that was taken on the grassy knoll immediately after the assassination, and I remember seeing it, and CBS showed it before they knew it was Tippit that had been killed. It's really an amazing thing, and I'll stop it there because I don't want to get out too soon because I'm still tracking down that film. But Tippit was an integral part of the assassination plot. He was the best friend of Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby and he used to ride around in the squad car. Ruby used to like to pretend to be a detective. And when I investigated the deaths of those 18 people who died, astronomically out of probability in 2 years after the assassination, I said to myself, well, these people were getting knocked off. What is it that they were talking about? What is it that they knew that was getting them killed? And in a large number of these cases of people who were killed, it was people who had found out or had prior knowledge of the intimate relationship between J.D. Tippit and Jack Ruby. 2 reporters that visited Ruby's apartment on the night that Ruby killed Oswald, they were killed, one with a karate chop and one was killed in a California police station. Get this, the cop was twirling his gun, he dropped it, it hit the floor and discharged and killed this reporter.
I don't buy that one. Sorry.
No, of course I don't buy.
And a karate chop. Hold on.
Oh yeah, this some guy
Judo
died.
chop.
It was Matt Helm. I'm telling you, it was Matt Helm that did it.
Sort of like that, Matt Helm and all of those characters were Hollywood caricatures of real people that were going around doing that thing, and they were part of the
always
rat
get the hot babes, and they live in the penthouse, and they always had the hot babes.
Well, Frank Sinatra was another big player in this. The Las Vegas mob was in direct contact with Jack Ruby for several months before the assassination, and Ruby was making regular calls to what was his name? McWillie, some guy named a mobster named McWillie in Las Vegas.
There's no way that there could be a mobster named McWillie. It's not Italian enough.
Nowadays.
I'm sorry. It's not Italian enough.
Well,
he could be an Irish gangster.
Listen, the deal to kill Castro was sealed on September 25th, 1959, when Sheffield Edwards of the CIA met in Miami with Santos Trafficante and Carlos Marcello through the intermediary of Johnny Roselli. On that day, the CIA gave $10,000 in cash to Santos Trafficante and Carlos Marcello to get the assassination plot going. Now, this was part of an assassination committee that the United States had since the 1950s. These committees were called the October 5th Committee, then it molted into the October 20th Committee, then it became something called the 5412 Committee. And they dealt with eliminating political undesirables, assassinating communist candidates and communist agitators, and the communist
I wonder if those people are still around, because that would explain why some celebrities also have been shadowy deaths, it was and is a control apparatus. It became Operation 40 after 5412, but if you know the work of Fletcher Prouty, he was exposing it in the 1990s, and he called it the secret team. He told it, I can't tell you exactly its name, but we call it the secret team, and that's what they do. Now, here's the key to the whole thing. This assassination apparatus of the United States government had representatives of the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the Attorney General sat on it, so Robert Kennedy knew about it, the Defense Department, and then they had their hired killers. So this operation against Castro was conceived there. Right.
They got the intermediary and they hatched it. Okay. Now, this committee, in order to protect the President of the United States and give him plausible deniability, operated outside of his purview, and the chairmanship of this committee was given to the Vice President of the United States. Okay, so
it sounds like an episode of 24, doesn't it?
So Nixon, Richard Nixon, was the head of the assassination committee throughout the 1950s, and they are the ones that took out President Arbenz in Honduras, and they knocked off a few South American and Central American leftist leaders. But here's the irony. Kennedy got the nomination. Hoover blackmailed him into forcing Lyndon Johnson onto the ticket. Nixon expected to win and become president of the United States with a vice president, Henry Cabot Lodge.
Right.
Nixon lost the election because Kennedy stole the election because the mafia helped him steal the election in Chicago and several other places. Then he double-crossed the mob. Okay? So Nixon loses the election. And so Henry Cabot Lodge does not inherit the 5412 committee. But who inherits the 5412 committee? Lyndon Johnson, Vice President of the United States. So he inherited the chairmanship of the assassination apparatus that was aimed at Castro before he was elected, because it was Nixon's gig.
Right.
And then, when his head was in the noose in 1963, Lyndon Johnson was about to be impeached on November 22nd, 1963. A Senate committee, an investigation committee, was coming down with recommendation for impeachment. And after impeachment, he was going to see long-term in federal prison because they caught him red-handed in conducting land scams with his buddy Billy Solestis in Texas, and the shopping bags full of cash that Bobby Baker, his executive secretary, was caught with, taking bribes from mafia, from everybody.
Here's a question for you, Robert. If Tippit was involved, and we're saying him and Jack Ruby were friends, was Tippit aware that he was going to be used as the double? Did he know that he was going to get killed?
Obviously not. As a matter of fact, one of the most remarkable statements, there were two people involved at Tippit's killing. And the one who shot him over the trunk of the car and then walked up to him and put the bullets in his head ran away emptying the gun. He emptied the cartridges, the bullets, and they fell on the ground. And as he was running away and reloading, a lady, the witness who lived in the house right there where this near where the killing occurred, heard him say, "Poor dumb cop." You see, because they set him up. My take on Tippit is he was told, "Look, you're going to go and you're going to have to find Oswald, and when you kill Oswald, you're going to be the hero because you will be the guy who killed the hero who killed the guy who killed the president." You see. And for the same reason, Ruby was involved in it too. Ruby was in Dealey Plaza, and it's my belief that it was Ruby who took the throat shot with a small caliber weapon, standing in front of the sign. Yeah, I have found pictures of Jack Ruby standing in front of the sign, and there's people that haven't recognized them. And then there's a lot of misdirection and mislabeling, but it's famous. There's this thing called the Bronson film and the Bronson photo. Now, who was this Bronson? I heard about the Bronson film in 1992 and 93, and I started seeing it. So the 35mm photo he shot. It turns out it was Charles Bronson, the actor.
No kidding.
He was in Dealey Plaza. Charles Bronson had a TV show that I watched for 2 years, from 1958 and 59 to 1960, I believe, and it was called A Man with a Camera.
Huh.
And he just happened to be in Dealey Plaza for that event.
And
he took a 35mm slide from far away, and in it, you see the people. It's one of the few pictures that shows who was standing in front of the sign, the Stemmons Freeway sign. And years ago, I looked at it and I said, "Hey, man, that looks like Jack Ruby in the suit. He's fat, and he's got a dog." And they said, "Oh, no, that's Chisholm, and that's his 8-year-old boy or 7-year-old boy who was with him." I looked at the picture again. They said, "Chisholm?" And he said, "Yeah, and that's his 7-year-old boy." And I said, "Look, if that's Chisholm's 7-year-old boy, he has 4 legs and a tail, and he's standing in the gutter with his paws up."
Well, he might have some kind of
Well, no, this is the key. This is the key. Jack Ruby didn't go anywhere without his favorite dog, Sheba. People said he was almost married to it. You know the story about him shooting Oswald, and he left her in the car with the latch, so the locks off, so somebody would find her. Well, that was Jack Ruby, and I think that I have found him, and that he took the shot. Now, why did he kill Oswald? because Oswald was going to talk. Oswald had infiltrated everything. He had infiltrated the anti-Castro Cubans.
And Oswald denied shooting the president when they asked him.
Of course.
He denied everything.
And you hear it in his voice,
Yeah,
like,
that's the most important thing, yeah.
I think every one of us is touched by that. We all hear innocence in his voice when he answers the question, and then the fear that comes in when he says, and nobody told me that until one of the reporters asked me that in the hallway. He says asked instead of asked.
Right.
Anyway.
Now, how much do you think he knew, though, at the end of the day? Because we're almost out of time here, but I wanted to ask you this. How much do you think he knew at the end of the day of what was going on? Was he fully aware of the assassination attempt, or was he...
Obviously, he was not aware that he was going to be the patsy, man. But
right.
Listen to this. This is the greatest part of the story, and it just came to me recently when I heard...
we got 30 seconds.
Richard Russell, who wrote The Man Who Knew Too Much about Richard Case-Nagel, said that the KGB tried to stop the Kennedy assassination because they knew it was going to happen. They knew that the plot was to pin it on Oswald and make it reflect on them. So the KGB ordered Richard Case-Nagel to kill Oswald to stop the plot from reflecting on them. They said, they're going to pin it on us. They're really smart. So listen, The key to this thing is a wonderful thing. The KGB didn't do things like that without the knowledge going all the way to the top. So in my belief, Premier Khrushchev, when he found out that they were going to try to kill President Kennedy and pin it on him and Castro, he ordered the KGB to try to kill Oswald. And they killed the wrong guy. They killed the Oswald double.
Okay. We're going to stop it right there, and we're going to tease for the next time you're on.
Go, but this is and he did die. He did die for trying to let out the UFOs in Area 51. And
we're going to cover more on this soon with Robert here. Guys, it's almost time to go.
Time went fast.
Time flies. Yeah, the hour goes by quick on Skywatchers Radio. But thank you, Robert, for being on. Thanks, Alejandro, for being on earlier.
Thank
you guys are always... You guys are always awesome to have on. Thank all the listeners for listening.
No worries.
Alan, thank you for being on as always, as usual. And Keith, thank you for putting together Dark Matter Radio Network and letting us broadcast live every week. Guys, join us next week. We'll be back with another great guest. I promise you. Until then, this is Skywatchers Radio, and we are saying good night. Is one of those like researchers that really does store information, like him, people like him, yourself, even to an extent, Nick Redfern, who writes like 1,000 books. I mean, these researchers and investigators and reporters that really put the time in, should be commended and should really be applauded. Bill has been doing it for a while now, and he is like a well of information. Like he was Wikipedia before there was Wikipedia. You know what I mean? Like he's the human Wikipedia. Like, this guy knows just about everything. It's sometimes I tell Nancy, I'm like, just let him talk. I really want to hear what what he's going to say. This is good.
Told me a teaser about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
At the Congress, one of the guys behind the scenes, wonderful guy. I actually got him to allow me to interview him a few months ago. His name is Jordan Peace. He works behind the scenes doing the AV at many of these conferences, including the MUFON ones and at the UFO Congress. This guy is awesome. He's one of the coolest guys. He's just one of the most super nice people in the world. And she had a great idea, and he bought this trivia system, a Jeopardy-like system. And it was his idea. He tested it out, actually, at the last conference and everything, and he's ready to go. So I think we're going to do a Jeopardy session at the next UFO Congress.
Nice.
We haven't decided who will line up against each other, but hopefully if Bill Byrne comes as a speaker, we'll have to get him on that panel if he'll do it. But it's going to be a lot of fun because we'll get some of the speakers, some of the UFO researchers to go head-to-head on UFO Jeopardy and see how they do.
I'll tell you what, though, you might want to ask Nancy also because, she's a very bright researcher herself.
Sure.
I mean, not to leave her out of the compliment session here. Nancy knows her stuff, man. Amazingly so.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, she's the lead of the show we were talking about last night. she commands the show, and like you said, and it was great. Yeah.
It was awesome. Now, of course, Open Minds news outlet. This is like it's becoming the number one source for ufology news, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, like, we read a lot of the stories right off of the website, Open Minds. You know, we've talked about it before here on the show, and how much I admire what you guys do there. And of course, all right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio. Here we are live, and we're joined by Mr. Alejandro Rojas from Open Minds Radio, Open Minds TV, and of course, he's a fellow Skywatcher like us. He's been on the show many times, and now he's going to join us on a periodic basis to give us some Open Minds news. And, you know, we're always excited to have you on, Alejandro, and it's been so long since we last talked, you and I. Wait, no, that was just a few hours ago. Yeah, it's kind of weird, huh? How that works. So how you been, man,
so
in the last 24 hours?
Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to have you on my show.
Yes.
Next week.
That's going to be cool. I'm going to be on Open Minds. Huh?
Yeah, I never get invited anywhere.
Who was that? Did you guys hear that?
Total Barbara Walters, and Angel's going to be sobbing.
Oh, boy.
By the time everything's over. So people, if you want to hear about Angel and the childhood experiences that make him weep on the radio, then you want to tune in.
I will say this: nobody makes me cry on air like Alejandro Rojas.
I am not even. Hold on one second. I'm reaching for that 10-foot pole.
Who is that speaking? I know Alejandro's on. Anyway, Alejandro, so how have you been, my friend?
Good, very good. Keeping busy, of course, as usual. And, you know, it's kind of fun because, of course, we were on last night on Future Theater with the Burns, which was a lot of fun. And
how was that for you? How was that for you, though? Let's before we get into some news, how was that for you? Because you haven't been on Future Theater before, and I know that Nancy and Bill have been dying to have you on, and we finally made it happen yesterday. How cool was that?
Well, let's see. I'll have to be, you know, careful how I say this because I know Nancy may be.
You're a very busy person on Open Minds, the website, and you know, reporting the news. What's the latest that you guys are working on? Give us a little scoop of what's going on. And there is one thing that I wanted to ask you about, but I'm going to ask you first to give us what the latest is that you're working on before I go into this one story.
Okay, cool. Yeah, something I worked on today was a lot of fun, and this is a movie called Abductee.
Yes,
and
I heard about
there's
that.
a guy, you know, you probably played the show. I don't know if you talked to him, but there's a guy named William Hoff, who is the producer and the director and the script writer. And, you know, you aired my show, so I'm sure you heard it. And I interviewed him a few months ago because he told me I'm working on a found footage film called Abductee. And I like talking to people in entertainment who do this sort of thing just to get their perspective, what they think, if they believe in it. But this was really refreshing because this guy is really into abduction research and abduction, and his whole goal was to do a first person that really represents what people reportedly go through. And so he, in order to do this, he's been trying to crowdfund this film. When I interviewed him, that's what stage he was at. He had an idea. He had a script that he spent a lot of time researching to put together. And so he was pushing for it. And I was excited to talk to the guy. But to be honest, I was skeptical it would go anywhere because, you know, it's films. Everybody wants to make a film, making, you know, enough money to make one is hard to do. But he sent me this press release this week, and I've been in contact with him where he is at the stages where they're going to start to shoot on October 2nd. And it's pretty exciting because he's gotten a Emmy Award-winning producer and director to work with him. This is a lady who won an Emmy in 2009 for her work on the A&E's Intervention television show. And he's got a couple of he's got a full suite of actors, but he's got a couple of leads who have worked on quite a few TV shows, big TV shows and movies. His lead actress has worked on a couple movies with Susan B. Listening. No,
she is.
It was a lot of fun. No, it was a ton of fun. In fact, it was funner than it was more fun than most radio experiences because
he sounded like me there for a second. It was
Nancy
funner.
Wanted to,
You sounded like me for a second. It was funner.
Yeah, Nancy wanted to kind of ask me some tough questions, which I appreciate because I like to do that too when I can. And it's hard for people to do sometimes when they're not educated on items. But certainly the Burns are really, they're kind of icons in this field. They've been around for so long. They're very, very well versed in many topics in this field, which makes it even more fun. So that's one of the fun things. It kind of felt like, in the back rooms of the conferences when you're kind of getting together with other researchers and batting stuff around and kind of off the cuff and candid. And that's what it felt like. So it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
It was geeky fun for me, man. I was just sitting back, and just, marveling at the fact that I have you on, Bill on, Nancy on, and I'm just like sitting there like, wow, I can't believe I'm on this call. This is a really cool call. Because, I'm a fan of ufology. I'm a fan of you guys, you, Bill. I mean, I've watched Bill on TV for crying out loud. I mean, how cool is that?
I mean, you guys are all pillars of the community.
There's
what
that
was
voice
really
again.
cool, like Bill, how he can spout out all of these facts and history and have that memorized. For me, it's hard because when I write a story, I really, really get into it. I've got to do all this research to figure it out and get into it. But I move on to the next thing, and then the facts kind of go off into the nethers. So I'm not really good at holding on to all of those facts and figures and everything. So it was so impressive that he can do that. And it was really great being able to talk to him because I've only been able to talk to him here and there. So that was probably the longest I got to talk to him. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, Bill
Sarandon, and you can go and see their IMDb. I have a link to those to see their history. So he has really got some top-notch people here, and he is ready to shoot. So it's pretty exciting. His whole goal is not just for this to be a movie, but to kind of start a social kind of a community for abductees to help solidify the community, but also to help represent them and give them a voice. So his goal is not just a movie, but like he says, a whole social movement to get this topic more mainstream. So that's pretty cool. I think I applaud his efforts. I hope the movie turns out great, and it's a lot of fun keeping track of what this guy's up to.
That is very cool. And how are they funding this thing? Is it self-funded, the movie, or?
Yeah, all self-funded, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about going through Hollywood and everything. In fact, he had a good quote here about he wants to keep investors out of the mix to keep the film free of the control exerted by Hollywood executives and movie studios, which can destroy a film's purpose and impact.
Very true.
And it's kind of funny because he talks about, a lot of scriptwriters write these great scripts, and then the Hollywood guys get their hands on it, and they ruin the movie, and you don't get to see the movie you wanted to see. So he had some a video that he did for his crowdsourcing Kickstarter, and I think I used another one to get money. And he talks about this in the video about how it was really important for him to keep it out of investors' hands and the regular people who produce these sort of things, so it can be more pure and accurate to the research.
I'm surprised more folks like him haven't taken to Kickstarter or GoFund. What is it, GoFundMe or something like that? It's another one of those accounts.
Well, they do.
Indiegogo is another one.
But a lot of them don't make it anywhere. I mean, I interviewed someone not too long ago. I think he wanted to do a comic book. I don't think he made enough.
Are you kidding me?
There's the John Mack piece where they're struggling.